1999, sitting in my house in Eugene, Oregon. I would have been a junior at the University of Oregon. And amateur wrestling, you don't get a lot of it now. Even if you're a fan, you're looking for it, but it does exist. You can get it. Big Ten Network comes to mind, or Big 12, some of these conference networks, if you know what channel to go and you know how to subscribe, and you can get a little bit of wrestling. Well, there was a guy, Big Ten Network, there was a guy wrestling for Minnesota. He had 2 years of eligibility left. This was his first year. I bring that to you because in college, right, you have 5 years, you got a redshirt year, and you get to compete 4 of them. This guy broke on the scene, but he only had 2 years left. He'd come through junior college. He'd already done his red shirt. He won a national title in the junior college. He gets picked up by Minnesota, going to wrestle for him as heavyweight. But when I see him, he pins a guy, and this stands up, and he turns to the cameras, and he does a flex, which you just don't see in college very often. Oh, by the way, this flex was flat impressive. Maybe even intimidating is the word. This guy was so big and strong. It was a young man named Brock Lesnar. It was the first time that I ever saw him. And I remember seeing that flex. I remember seeing this intensity that was awesome. We just didn't have that in amateur wrestling to any degree. Somebody that you're watching them on camera and they pop. There's a star power and you watch it. But I do remember that moment, and this all the way back in 1999. Do you remember many moments that you ever had watching TV? I mean, your whole life, like, do you remember very many moments? And so I go to practice later that day. The team, we're sitting around, we're doing our warm-up, we're rolling our ankles out. Or, we're sitting there, got the guy in the middle, and everybody's doing what he does. You've seen warm-ups before, and this topic starts coming up. Other guys have seen it. Hey, did you see that guy from Minnesota? Did you see that guy from Minnesota that put the gun on his back, and then he flexed for the cameras, right? Like, this is going around. He starts to become a little bit of a phenom, and you've got to understand the time frame in 1999. Like, there was no social media. Everything that I just told you, we're sitting there, we're warming up, and we're stretching our legs out, and we're talking in a group. Now you could do that with your thumbs, alone at home. But it wasn't like that back then. Water cooler talk, guys standing around and just visiting within the office or within the team or the warm-up situation I'm talking about, that is how a star was made. Whatever it was that you were talking about, assuming that other people were too, that's what, it's very hard. It was a very different time. And no matter how well this high school, or rather college junior, was going to do, wasn't overly relevant, because in that bracket was a guy named Stephen Neal, who by many was the greatest heavyweight the world had ever seen. He was the defending champion. He stormed through everybody. And he knew how to wrestle. I'm talking about Stephen Neal. And he knew how to wrestle. This guy from Minnesota was big and intense, and boy, did he look strong. But it wasn't quite the same thing. Or was it? Nobody actually knows. We're going to have to get to the tournament, figure it out. So hype starts building around this Lesnar character. They get to the NCAA tournament. Stephen Neal, defending champion, undefeated, ranked number 1. Brock Lesnar, never been there before, junior college kid, also undefeated, ranked number 2. Seeded. Number 2, opposite sides of the bracket. So they're always wrestling first round, second round, third round. They're wrestling at the same time, essentially. And I remember the announcer. I remember fall on mat 4 for Stephen Neal of Bakersfield, and a fall on mat 7 for Lesnar of Minnesota. They pinned their way to the finals, both of them. 8 matches between them, 4 apiece. 8 pins between them, 4 apiece. But now you've got the big, intense, and the new kid on the block taking on the defending champion. And it turns out to be a really close match. It was separated by a point of 3-2. But within that 3-2, there was a respect shown to Lesnar by Stephen Neal. You could see it. You could see that Neal knew this guy's a little bit different. All right, fast forward the tape. Stephen Neal goes into the NFL and ends up winning 3 Super Bowls. Lesnar goes to the professional ranks. And when it got announced to us that Lesnar was going to professional ranks, I mean, don't forget, the world was very different. This wasn't something done over social media. And I remember everybody that heard that being very excited. There was just something to the presence. There was something to the presentation of this gentleman, Brock Lesnar. It was just different. And by the way, that was Brock's junior year, the match with Stephen Neal that I just described. The following year became Brock's senior year, where he also went into that tournament undefeated, but he won the NCAA championship. So he goes off into professional wrestling. Let's see what's going to happen. Well, he makes it to the top fast. This is off the top of my head, but I believe Brock Lesnar was the world heavyweight champion, the same belt that Hulk Hogan once held, at 26 years old. And I believe Brock went in at 24. So, I mean, at 24 with knowing nothing, he's got to go train, and that's all behind the scenes, and you got to get him in front of the cameras, you got to tell a story to the world. And I believe by 26, he was the champion. It was just this remarkably fast career. Somewhere along the way, we hear that this Brock Lesnar is going to end up in MMA. And it was the same situation where you couldn't wait. You knew there's just something there. How's he going to do? What skills does he have? Is he taking this serious? Sure, all those questions were around. Generally, though, you would use, when somebody was in that environment and having those questions, you would use that to dismiss them. It wasn't like that with Brock, because there's just something special about Brock. I can't do you any better than that. Like, if you think I'm going to go out and I'm going to study and I'm going to copy, you could sit down and quiz, but he doesn't even know what he did, right? There's just something about him. There is a presence about him. There's a toughness. You put him in situations where very few people could make it. He finds a way each time. He found a way through the NCAA. Prior to that, he found a way through the junior college. By the way, let's give him credit for that. He found a way in MMA to be the world champion. He found a way in WWE to stick around all this time. 46 years old. I mean, I'm bringing this entire diatribe because I believe he just retired. I believe SummerSlam, when he passed the torch to Cody, is the end of the line. And what a remarkable job, by the way. You know, you don't get criticized once your career's over. When his career's active and it's hot, fine, we'll go back and forth, tear him apart, point out all of his flaws. It's not like that once he's done. Once he's done, it's only the positive. Only adoration. And it really has been a remarkable run. And what is he going to do now? What is he going to do with his time? I don't think he could answer that himself. I think he might find himself a little bit bored. But what a special career, what a special job. Very hard way to find yourself to the top ever. For one day, one moment in time. He did it within 3 very different. I mean, the entertainment world to the actual competition world, these are very different. And he found a way to get to the top. And he deserves a lot of credit for that.